their announcement. Proud to announce we have finished the 24 outstanding women and men who get our country, and all of whom are ready on day one. So, this is the cabinet.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I am happy to be here this afternoon with the Honorable James A. Goriorty, who was retained on July the 30th, 2020 to provide input into the nature, scope, and mechanisms of an inquiry into ground search and rescue for lost and missing persons in Newfoundland and Labrador. Today, we take another important step in improving ground search and rescue in our province with the formal establishment of this inquiry. Provincial legislation provides for a number of mechanisms to initiate an inquiry. Section 16 of the Public Inquiries Act 2006 enables an inquiry into a matter to be considered of public concern. This inquiry will be primarily policy focused rather than being investigative in nature. It will examine the organization, the operations of ground search and rescue systems in the province, with a final report making recommendations how to improve that system. This inquiry will look at will look different from most recent commissions of inquiry, like the Muskrat Falls Project and the Commission of Inquiry into the Donald Dunphy death. The inquiry into ground search and rescue for the lost and missing persons in Newfoundland and Labrador will be smaller and more focused. While this inquiry will not focus on any single incident, we cannot deny how we arrived here. The 2012 death of young Burton Winters in Labrador exposed gaps in the system. It was in the light of this tragedy that our government committed to reviewing ground search and rescue throughout the province. None of us know when we will require the support of search and rescue teams, but we hope that if we need them, the service will be there and that service is adequate and prepared to respond in a timely manner. I now invite Judge Jim to speak on his work to date and his plans going forward.
Thank you, Minister. It's indeed a pleasure to meet you and a great pleasure and honor for me to be part of this entire process. I was approached, as the Minister has pointed out, in late July, early August, to see if I'd be interested. And the main reason that I was willing to accept the invitation is to honor the memory and legacy of Burton Winters. I think the people of Makkovik, people in Nunatsiavut, as well as on the coast of Labrador, and certainly from the interest shown by the entire province, is that this is an inquiry that focuses on Burton Winters as the start, and we will continue by looking at ground search and rescue to try and determine whether there are changes required, the history of ground search and rescue, and speaking with experts in the field. And of course, they could be volunteers as experts who will speak with us to make the necessary changes. I think that as with every other group and incentive that has occurred, COVID has played a major part in whether or not we can proceed in a timely fashion. Naturally, we would have wanted to be well ahead of the process by now, but we were overtaken by the impact of COVID, and we have to work around that. But I think we've made fantastic progress, especially to hear that the community of Makkovik has now been inoculated, and that opens the door for us very shortly to begin our entire process there. This is an inquiry about ground search and rescue. Naturally, We have to apply the Burton Winters incident and other incidents when we review ground search and rescue. But please understand that provincial inquiries under the Provincial Inquiries Act are limited in the scope of what we can cover. We cannot cover the jurisdiction of the federal government, but I'm very happy to say that the discussions by the two levels of government have resulted in very optimistic sense that we'll have the necessary preparation to have people ask a lot of questions and to answer a lot of questions in that regard. So this is, in fact, a very sad anniversary that we're approaching. A long time has passed since the incident occurred, which resulted in the passing of Burton. But in our discussions with my two colleagues, Mr. Carter and Mr. Ralph, we have worked closely with the Indigenous groups, with the interested parties who handle search and rescue, the fantastic volunteers that this province has had, and other experts in the field, as well as the police forces. Consequently, we feel that we are ready to proceed, that I will soon get my marching orders to ensure that we have a wonderful launch, and people should understand that we've spent quite a bit of time doing our consultations and research, and we are ready to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Judge Igliordi. It's certainly a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon, and the time that you've already spent on this inquiry and how important it is to the Winters family and to others throughout the province. So I guess we'll turn it over to the media.
Thank you, Minister and Judge Igliordi. For the benefit of our speakers, we have 4 registered media on today's call. The question and answer session will be conducted in 2 rounds, where each reporter will have the opportunity to ask 1 question, 1 follow-up in the first round, and 1 question in the second. Following this, I will ask each reporter if they have a final question. Our questions today start with Jeremy Eaton from CBC. Please go ahead.
Good day, gentlemen. Minister Crocker, you just said that this inquiry won't focus on a single incident, but it was first promised to the Winters family about 2 years ago. Will they be able to get the answers that they've been waiting for the last couple of years?
I would certainly, I have every faith in the world that the judge will certainly make sure that through his deliberations that we get those answers. And maybe, Judge, if you want, that might be something if you want to.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jeremy. Our mandate, of course, is outlined in the terms of reference that we'll be getting very shortly. And in that regard, we have, I certainly have felt that the focus should be on ensuring that the family has had counsel. They do, very experienced counsel, who's now had an opportunity to speak with them and with us already, so that we fashion the nature of the inquiry in a way that not only will this immediate family have a chance to speak with us and ask questions, but also we want to arrive in the community and allow the community, students who lived and went to school with young Burton, people who have given a lot of thought about how it happened and what happened, to be able to ask the questions. Now, will they get all the answers that are necessary to satisfy them? That is not likely, that's unrealistic, but I can assure you that we will do our best to allow them to ask the questions and give us the necessary forms of recommendation that they want us to review.
Yeah, if I could just add for a second, Jeremy, we've been, the department and Judge Igliordi, we have been having regular discussions with the family. That's important that we make sure that, we know what, I guess, their expectations are, so that we can do everything that we can so that we actually deliver to the best of our ability.
Thank you. The follow-up question is, what sort of time frame are we looking at? I know that the judge was talking about going into Makovic, but when can we expect, I guess, to get boots on the ground, and how long, I guess, of a period do you have for this, and when do you hope to wrap it up?
Thank you. Thank you. I can answer that question. Essentially, the overall time span brings us to about the end of June. That's when we'd like to have everything clued up. Naturally, we may need to have a little bit more time beyond that, and our starting point will depend very much on the directions we get from the Department of Health and the public officials with respect to arriving in the community. We'll have a website, so people will be able to see the schedule that we've arranged and the necessary roundtables that we want to get into.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Your Honor. Next on the line, we have Richard Duggan with the OCM News. Please go ahead.
Thank you. How much of a cost are we looking at with this inquiry?
The budget for this inquiry is $1.5 million.
And you mentioned that we're still waiting to get the official mandate, but what are some of the big outstanding issues that you feel need to be addressed and top of mind with this?
Would you like to take that?
Yes, I'm happy to answer that question as well. Basically, first of all, we want to focus on the incident which occurred in Makovic. We want to assure that the community members, Nunavut government, and other Indigenous groups get a chance to guide and direct the process as well as the information we receive from them. And of course, we want to be able to say to the rest of the province that the care that you expressed so many years ago and the support you gave to the family will offer us a chance to leave a positive legacy for Burton.
Thank you.
Next on the line, we have Kellyanne Roberts with NTV News. Please go ahead.
Thank you. The details for this inquiry were supposed to be released in the fall. That's from the July 30th announcement. What has been the delay to push this to now?
I'm sorry, Kellyanne, could you repeat your question?
Yes, sorry. The details in terms of scope and mandate were supposed to be released in the fall. That is according to the July 30th announcement in Labrador. What was the delay in having this release now come today?
So I think, you know, as the judge referenced earlier, you know, there's been delays to everything due to COVID. And, you know, we wanted to give Judge Igliordi the opportunity to form this inquiry into the inquiry that he wants it to be. And I think that, you know, taking the extra time or taking the time to do that was very important. And I think that's what got us to where we are today.
Yeah, and if I could
Thank
just,
you.
can I just add to that, Kellyanne, you okay with that?
Yes, absolutely. Please do.
Yeah, so we've been working behind the scenes, the two colleagues I mentioned, and we have spent a lot of time in various iterations of what the nature and scope of this inquiry should be. And people are going to find that it's quite a bit different from the Muskrat Falls inquiry. It's, for the most part, non-adversarial. It is designed to ensure that we allow people who are experts in the field, the ones I mentioned, to tell us how they experience specific incidents, how they reflect on them, and with their expertise to tell us how we can make things better. So that's taken a bit of time to meet with we've met with all of the indigenous groups. We have met with various groups who handle the search and rescue activities within the province, the RCMP as well, and done a fair bit of research independent of all of that. So it's taken some time. Naturally, I can't direct the government to come back with the different iterations we have had of the terms of reference, but I think now we've reached a stage where we can actually make a lot of progress.
Thank you. And how will the inquiry operate in terms of public access amid the pandemic? You mentioned this will be different than the Muskrat Falls or the Dunphy inquiry. So how will the public be able to either provide input or just tune in?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good question. We've spent a lot of time thinking about that. You're going to see, with respect, I'll say, that there'll be fewer lawyers than you saw in the Muskrat Falls inquiry. Our budget is quite a bit smaller. We've had to think of ways to streamline the process and to emphasize the economics of making sure that we allow everyone who wants to participate. We'll have a website up very soon, and in that regard, we will also make sure that we reach the maximum number of people who want to participate by having sessions including roundtables and a facilitator.
Thank you. Thank you. Next on the line, we have Evan Kareen with the Telegram. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I guess because of the nature of how this inquiry came about with Burton Winters, there does seem to be a bit of a focus on Labrador. You have mentioned that the different Indigenous governments have been involved so far. How involved will the communities and the Indigenous governments and groups of Labrador be going forward?
Just repeat your last point, please, Evan, if you could.
I said, just how involved will the Indigenous governments and groups and communities of Labrador be going forward in this inquiry?
Yeah, thank you. Well, once we started the consultation process, the public engagement process with the Indigenous groups, we had to assure them that we will follow up on any promises we make, any promises to have their full participation. So we expect rather that this will be a major component equal to the number of places we will visit on the island, since we recognize, and we have been told by the Indigenous groups and the leaders, that just recognize that their daily life is involved with being on the land. The nature of their activities, the nature of their association with the land and with outdoor activities is one that puts them in a much more risk, as we've heard many people say on the news and ones we've spoken to as well.
Thank you very much.
Evan, did you have a follow-up? You can go with the second question at this point.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier, and you expanded upon it a little bit, that there's going to be more policy based. I was wondering if you could expand on that a little bit more.
Well, I think I could just add, and then I could turn it over to the judge, but, you know, to his earlier statement, again, this is going to be a different style of an inquiry, much more of sitting around and listening to people and their experiences. You know, the judge just referenced the traditions of the Indigenous people in Labrador, and even many people in rural parts of this province. You know, we spend a lot of our lives on the sea and on the land, and I think this needs to be more about the policy and the process of making sure that we don't find ourselves in these situations again. This is not an investigative type inquiry.
I will add that indeed it is non-adversarial. We are actually probably going to be limiting the number of legal counsel because there won't be the necessity, in our view,
It's like ground control there, Judge.
no sweat.
On vous transfère maintenant à la conférence.
So how many government announcements was that today? Did anyone count?
I believe this is the second in the media center today.
Yeah, and there was like 7 others. I think I counted 8 between yesterday and today of just, good news announcements, I guess I'll call it.
Funny timing.
Yes, I was going to ask about that. But the other thing I want to know...
Hi, folks. It's Krista. We're back
Hey.
live. So
Perfect.
I just interrupt. We're going to, I believe we'll finish off, I believe Minister and the judge will finish off answering Evan's follow-up, and then we'll go back through the list.
So, Evan, maybe you can remind me where I was in respect to your question.
You had pretty much just started speaking, I think, when we lost the feed. So, not very far in.
And was it specifically with respect to the participation of council?
About how this inquiry would be more policy-based.
Ye-
Focused around policy.
Yes, thank you very much. That's right. I mean, I can finish up by saying that it will indeed, as I mentioned, be not adversarial, and that we will be looking for experts to guide all of our thinking. We will be looking for discussion papers, presenting discussion papers, wanting responses to that, allowing people to come back after a certain amount of time and respond to those. And in fact, we will probably put out a draft set of recommendations for all of the parties to review before we make a final determination.
Thank you, Your Honor. We'll go back to the list now and start again with Jeremy Eaton. Please go ahead.
Minister Crocker, there's been a number of government announcements in the last couple of days, a lot of sort of good news announcements, including this one. Obviously, there's no secret there's a possible election looming. What sort of impact does that have on the timing of this announcement?
Thank you, Jeremy. This announcement was something we've been working towards for quite some time. As the judge said earlier, they've been doing extensive work behind the scenes since July, late July, early August, and it was important for us to keep this process moving. It was important for us to make sure that the people that we've engaged with so far, there's a continuity here. So from our standpoint in the Department of Justice, this is an announcement that was coming today, or it was coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Next on the line, we have Richard Duggan with the OCM. Please go ahead.
So it's been mentioned a couple of times now that this inquiry will focus mainly on policy, but there will be time spent on the death of Burton Winters. So I'm just wondering how much focus will be put on the Burton Winters incident specifically within the scope of this entire inquiry.
Thank you for your question. Well, it will be how we begin the inquiry, because we really want to frame the examinations we do and the recommendations that we find as being the Burton Winters inquiry, but more importantly, the legacy that he has fashioned for all of us. I think people were entirely impacted by his passing. There were a lot of questions arising about search and rescue. As I said, there are some areas that we don't have the jurisdiction to get into, and I'm also limited by what a commissioner is required to talk about within the framework of the terms of reference and under the Public Inquiries Act. But we will begin in Makkovik. We will allow time for the entire community to speak to us if they wish, and we will make sure that insofar as we can, we will answer any questions that they have through the presentation of various of witnesses to participate in the discussions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Next on the line, we have Kellyanne Roberts with NTV News. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Burton Winters died in the year of 2012. It's now 2021 when this inquiry will begin. Judge, are you disappointed in how long it's taken for this to get to this point?
Well, I can only reflect on what we've discussed with regard to the family and their counsel. But at the same time, I think they have expressed to us a huge expression of relief that indeed there will be some recognition of the value of the young man's life in how we can honor his memory. So for the most part, despite the passage of time, we take a positive view that he, in fact, has been the impetus for a review of this entire process.
Thank you.
Next on the line, we have Evan Crean with the Telegram. Please go ahead.
Hi. In the past, jurisdictional issues have been brought up as an area of concern. Has the federal government committed to taking part in this yet?
So we've been talking to the federal government. They've agreed to cooperate in this. There are still discussions as recently as a couple of days ago between Intergovernmental Affairs here in our province and the federal government. We still haven't got definite answers from them, but we do know that they have offered to cooperate when it comes to questions around the resources that they would have.
Okay, thank you. I don't have a follow-up.
Okay, thank you, Evan. I actually will go back through the list to each reporter and see if they have one final question. So Jeremy Eaton with CBC, please go ahead if you have a final question.
Yeah, just one more thing. I know that obviously we've talked a lot about the focus more on policy, but do you think that you'll? Oh, sorry, I wasn't expecting it for long. Well, are you pleased with what you think you'll get out of this inquiry, given that it's taken so long to get to this point? Sorry for the rambling.
No, thank you very much. Well, yes, I think that I wouldn't be involved if there was not some indication that we're quite willing to review the entire search and rescue system. We're quite willing to let people in the province know how valuable the work of volunteers are, and indeed how search and rescue in Newfoundland and Labrador actually guides what happens in the rest of Canada and the value of their policies to the rest of Canada. Naturally, if we can find connections between the various jurisdictions, if we can streamline any process that might help to rescue or assist people and families more quickly, then that is what we will want to hear.
If I can just add, Jeremy, for a second, we have every confidence that the judge will certainly provide us with some very valuable information and as to, I guess, how we go forward to make sure that we don't see these types of instances, or make sure that we have every ability to respond when we need to respond for these type of circumstances.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Richard Duggan, do you have a final question?
Yes, I do. So the inquiry will start off in Makkovik. Who are some of the other players you're hoping to bring in and talk with throughout the course of this process?
Thank you. Well, we've had early discussions, as we've pointed out, with NL Sarah, CA Sarah Casera. We've had discussions with the RNC. We've started discussions with the RCMP and how they work. We know that we'll be hearing from the Rovers, and we also will be working with the Canadian Rangers and the Junior Rangers if they want to make presentations to us. Mr. Wiseman has spoken on public broadcasting that he'd like to have some discussions, and anybody else who has an opinion will be able to write in opinions, present opinions. We'll have a website for people to get onto. So I think we're trying to reach the broadest group of people that we can who want to have a part to play in this.
Thank you.
Kellyanne Roberts with NTV News. Do you have a final question?
I have two, if that's all right. I should have asked one in the last round there. I'm wondering, Judge, how long you anticipate it'll take for you to form your report at the close of the inquiry?
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to my summer holidays, so I will certainly be pressing everyone to try and get concluded in the time frame that we've been given, which is around the end of June. So that would mean a complete wrap-up and presentation of the final report.
Okay, great. And you've come out of retirement to do this. How hard of a decision was that?
Yeah, well, I've been trying to keep myself busy even after retirement, and I sit on various boards. I do some work for the federal government with respect to Indigenous issues affecting people who have had settlements in various agreements, such as the Newfoundland Labrador residential school system, the McLean Day School system. So I've been trying to keep myself active. So it's a challenge, but it's a welcome challenge, and really, I think, a service that if I can do it, I'm quite prepared to follow through.
Thank you.
Evan Green with the Telegram, just ensuring. Do you have a final question?
I don't, actually. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Minister Crocker and Judge Igliorte. The time for questions has now ended. If anyone on the call has any any more questions, you can forward them along to myself or Danielle Barron with Justice. Thank you, everybody, for participating in today's availability. Have a great day.